There's this quote I love that we can only progress to the level of openness to our blind sides, right? We can only progress up to the point that we're willing to say, okay, what don't I know? And where am I holding myself back? So if we have self-limiting beliefs around systems and processes, we're only going to progress to that ceiling. We have to be willing to say, okay, where are my own personal stories getting in the way here and stopping me from building out a proper team and creating calm?
Hey everyone, today's guest is Taylor Frame, the co-owner and chief revenue officer of Best Practice Media, a digital growth shop known for helping brands scale smart. Taylor has worked with over 400 e-commerce companies, from scrappy startups to enterprise-level giants, and under his leadership, the agency has launched and scaled more than 100 brands to a consistent six-figure months. He's a master of finding creative solutions in the constantly evolving e-commerce space and brings a wealth of experience in growth strategy, sales, and team leadership. Whether you're looking to scale your agency, lead a high-performing team, or navigate the ups and downs of growth, Taylor brings no fluff, practical experience and perspective that you're not going to want to miss. Welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thank you, Robert. Excited to be here.
So, when we were initially chatting, we talked about a lot of agency growth, and I'm curious just to kind of frame a bit of the conversation. You have built and scaled two agencies. And so what I'm curious to kind of hear is your journey through Best Practice Media, and how was that different than your first, and what was that journey like?
Yeah. So the first agency I built was something that we became accidental agency owners, is the way I like to phrase it. Is me and a friend, we were both working corporate jobs. We wanted a little side income. We were good at marketing. I was good at sales. He was good at delivery. We started taking on some side projects. And then that led to more introductions, more referrals. And before we knew it, we had a couple people on staff. We had 10 clients. We were doing $20K a month in revenue. And boom, we're agency owners. And we're like,
completely
whoa.
Unrelatable.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people start out as freelancers. And then as they grow and become more successful, they become accidental agency owners, right? And there's an inflection point where you have to decide, do I want to jump into this and really make a run at it? Or do I want to stay a freelancer? And there's no right or wrong answer to that, but you do have to make that very intentional decision. We made the intentional decision in my first agency to be agency owners. And we grew that agency to doing 7 figures a year. We were at like 2.5 million a year when we sold it, which is pretty decent. And at that point, we had about 15 people full-time on staff. We went to a max of 20 at one point. But the biggest fundamental shift between that old agency and what I've built now is the quality of the systems and how seriously we took the team building and like the infrastructure. My old agency, we ran mostly on talent, meaning we had really good people that cared, that would go the extra mile, but there was no systems. There was no processes. It was not built in the way that actually is scalable. And at 2.5 million, we were pretty tapped out. Right? That was about as high as we were going to get, because we did not build the framework and the foundation from the base up to get past that point. And so the biggest difference at Best Practice Media is we've invested a significant amount of time and resources, pretty much the last year and a half, building out from the foundation processes, systems, structure, and then we're constantly evolving that. Like, we have a full-time project management and like systems operations person that we pay full-time on staff. That's all they do.
I think that's an interesting distinction between the two agencies, and the learning lesson as the reason why, I'm sure, is also very interesting. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about the reason why you focus so much differently there. But the thing that I find so interesting in the first agency that you grew to the 2.5 million is that so many agencies end up being in that exact place, is that they are entirely reliant on the team. That person leaves and it causes an incredible amount of chaos, and actually causes the agency to shrink in size because the owner is now back involved, needing to find another person, bring them up to speed, and do all of that stuff. And it creates for a less fun experience for the team when you're bringing them on, because it just creates a whole lot of chaos for them. It creates a whole lot of chaos for the owner. But the reality is that I see so many agency owners kind of stuck in is this idea that they don't want the systems and process because they feel like it's a constraint around them that they do not want. They like this idea of being a bit more free flowing, but it actually makes their life in a lot of ways quite miserable.
There's this quote I love that we can only progress to the level of openness to our blind sides, right? We can only progress up to the point that we're willing to say, okay, what don't I know? And where am I holding myself back? So if we have self-limiting beliefs around systems and processes, we're only going to progress to that ceiling. We have to be willing to say, okay, where are my own personal stories getting in the way here and stopping me from building out a proper team and creating calm? Because there is a certain, as you start to scale the agency, as chaos shows up, that becomes our standard operating mentality of constantly in chaos. And everyone kind of actually like starts to enjoy it in a weird way. And so you actually have to pull back because it takes time to build the systems, and you have to build the race car so it can go the fastest. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in a machine that's constantly on fire. Right? So it's a big shift. And a lot of times I find it's the mental models of that founder or that executive team that is holding everybody back.
There was this interesting experience that I had. I want to say this is like circa 2009, 2010, that I had gone on a trip in Greece with a group of friends. And I remember being in this like complete utter panic because I was supposed to be completely disconnected. Largely, I was on vacation, should be disconnected. But then my phone didn't get any internet service at all. So like back in the day, it was like it had Edge, right?
Right.
And so my emails would kind of load, but they wouldn't actually load. So I spent 3 full days just like trying to get my email to load. My friends are enjoying the yacht, are enjoying the water in Greece and having fun. And I'm fucking miserable. And at the end of those 3 days, when I convinced my friends to go to a hotel, get out of the yacht and whatever. So I got Wi-Fi, checked all my emails, and nothing was wrong. There was no fires. And I learned 2 things, but the thing that I learned most starkly was that I was the problem, because actually in that moment, I wasn't relieved. I was actually disappointed that I wasn't actually as important as I thought I was. And I learned in that moment that I had created the business to kind of feed this ego need of mine to feel needed. And in order for me to be able to get to what I wanted to have in the business so that I wasn't at this stressful place, I needed to actually not be in the space that my team needed to stand in, so that no one can actually stand in the same place that I'm standing in. So I have to get out of the spot and let them actually take it over. And I find it, and maybe people are not going to have that exact same experience. Maybe they're not as egotistical as I am, but I found it really interesting. And I see that happen very frequently where people, business owners and agency owners, have this like Superman or Superwoman cape on that they enjoy the need to come in and solve the problem.
That is exactly right. And I have been on, multiple vacations where I was doing the exact same thing. And it came to the point where I was like, why am I even going on vacation? I don't like it. Like, I was miserable. And so I had to ask some really hard questions. And one of the questions I asked was just what you said, like, am I creating this because I want to feel important and I want to feel needed? And to some extent I was. And I had to say, all right, crew, this isn't about me. I've hired you guys and I pay you guys a lot of money because you're smart and capable. So we built out systems and frameworks that allowed them to handle things without bringing me into the mix. I was always there as a sounding board. So we have a principle that we've applied, and this comes from a really great mentor in the SaaS space, Dan Martell. I want to give credit to him for this. It's called the 1-3-1 model. So if you're coming to me with a problem or a complaint, number one, you have to clearly define what the problem is, not just be like, I don't know what to do, there's issues. I'm like, that doesn't work. It's like, the ROAS isn't what we need it to be on this one campaign. Okay, clearly define the problem. Step 2, bring 3 potential solutions to the table. Be like, I think we should mix in some new creative. I think we should adjust the landing page. I think we should test some new audiences. Like, okay, those are great, viable solutions. And then at the end, what would you do if this decision fell 100% on your shoulders? So 1-3-1. And we've integrated that into our agency. And it's amazing. My team will come to me like, hey, we have this problem. Here's the 3 things. Here's what I think we should do. We don't have to get on a huddle. We don't have to get on a Zoom call. I can say, that sounds amazing. Go and execute.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, hey, have you considered this one thing? And they're like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And then they go.
Dan Martell is awesome. The thing that I want to kind of talk through a little bit is, we have this kind of dream as business owners that we're going to start to be able to grow and be on like this linear path of growth. Yeah. And life tends to not really function that way. My life has been very kind of meandery, if you will. Yeah. And so what is your experience in that? And what has that experience kind of taught you about the actual path to growth?
Yeah. The number one word is grit. It's grit. At the end of the day, running a business is really hard, especially a service-based business where you are reliant on clients that can one day essentially decide, you know what, I'm going to go in a different direction. Like we had 2 clients leave in the last 60 days. We were getting the best results for them on their paid media than they've ever gotten anywhere else. And that they still were like, we think that this can be different. And we're pleading with them. No, like these are, look at the data. Like this isn't anything that is emotional. It's like the data is there, we're there. And so for these business owners, as they're thinking about the journey, you have to be okay with being really uncomfortable. And you have to be okay with very difficult things that sometimes are completely out of your control. So we have to hold 2 very distinct thoughts at the same time. The first one, everything is my fault. Okay. I own everything in my agency. And even if these people leave, what can we learn from this? How can we get better? How can we make our systems improve? Right. So that's the first thought we have to hold, extreme ownership. Mm-hmm. On the other side is this idea that we have to be kind to ourselves and we have to be gentle and we have to realize that sometimes we can't control this stuff. And like
most times we can.
Clients sometimes just leave, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And so I always use the analogy with my team. I'm like, we are a wagon train. We are going from New York to California. And along the way, we're going to experience all sorts of things. There's going to be marauders are going to attack us. People are going to die. Clients are going to join. Clients are going to leave. But this wagon train is going to the West, and we're going to get there. And the train's going to look very different when we arrive on that West Coast. Some of you be here, some of you won't. But it is manifest destiny. We're going there. And that level of grit, I think, helps frame it up where when you lose 1 or 2 clients, you're like, okay, great. That was a stop in the Midwest and it was tough. And we're going to move past that. So that would be my best advice is grit and also like kindness to yourself, grace.
I agree with what you're saying in so many respects because, I mean, the thing that I find very interesting, and I've done the exact same thing. Yes, we have to ultimately take ownership and what are the learning lessons that we can take in any scenario. But there's so many instances that the decision that's being made by the client actually doesn't have anything to do with us. So we like end up making it about us. There's other factors that are going on that have nothing to do with us. And then we're ended up being very self-centered about it. And while it's frustrating, don't get me wrong, it is absolutely frustrating. And I've blamed myself in many instances. I've been upset with myself in many instances. It definitely is frustrating. But the reality is we can either learn from that scenario or we can just beat ourselves up about it.
Yeah.
And I prefer to learn. The other thing that I find also interesting, and I'm curious on your take on this too, is that there's so much of this like idea that success is simple and easy. And I have had the exact opposite experience, And yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm also like a bit of a glutton for punishment, but like I like to start on the hardest thing first, the thing that I know that I'm going to fail at and like fail over and over and over and over and over. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with my brother several years ago where he's like, I'm quite jealous of the amount of success that you've had. Like in the past 6 months, I failed at this, I failed at this, I failed at this. And I was like, you just described Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 for me, like every single day. Like that's what life is. Like I'm just failing every minute of every day. And that's part of life. And if I'm not, then I'm not growing and I'm not even having fun anymore because then it's just so simple and easy and I'd be bored.
Right.
And it probably creates the problem, really. I'm curious on your take on that.
So a lot of the self-development work that I've done is differentiating between my business success and then my own intrinsic value as a human. And I have to do this a lot where, I've been really successful building agencies. I have a team right now of 30 full-time people that look to me to support their families. Like, that's a big weight. We have over 100 clients that we're supporting every single month. They are looking at us being like, you're running all of my growth marketing. And if we mess it up, like, a lot of those businesses will go out of business, right? So it's a lot of weight. But so I've done a lot of work, and here's the phrase that I've come to. You do not need to be a high performer to be loved. Like, you do not need to perform to be loved. And that just helps me separate that as a person, just who I am is beautiful and amazing. And it has nothing to do with my business success. I think they're loosely correlated, but they're not like 1 equals 1. So when I lose clients or I have tough days in the agency, that doesn't mean that I need to live in shame. Because at that point, I'm not learning. I'm not open to anything. And so that, once again, is holding two kind of competing things at the same time, which is hard, and the mind doesn't like doing it, but it becomes a practice. So back to your point about doing things that are challenging is, if you stick with it, the only way to fail is to quit. And so going back to the wagon chain example, we've lost all sorts of things, but we just keep waking up every morning, and can we get the wagon a little bit further down the field? And it works. And I've built 2 agencies doing that way, where people are like, how did you get to this? I'm like, I just refuse to quit.
It was, quite frankly, I find it quite deep in the fact that, you do not need to be a high performer to be loved. And honestly, that was such a hard thing for me to wrap my head around for such a long time, because that is what I held in really high esteem about myself, but that's not who I am as a person. And they definitely got really Frankensteined together.
Super meshed, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to untangle that. I'm still in that process, but I feel like I've made a lot of steps forward. It's hard.
And I've probably bought my therapist a boat.
Yes.
So let's talk about the practical components for a moment, because we're talking about the fact that business ownership does take a lot of grit. It takes a lot of recognition that you're not in control, but you can also stay consistent and not quit. But there's, in those moments of rough patches, when you're like in the swamp of it and things feel like you're just being hit left and right, which some days are like that, some weeks are like that, some years are like that. And what have you done in those moments, both from a mindset perspective and from a team perspective and from an agency perspective, to help stabilize and even pivot into the direction that you needed to go?
Tactically, there are 2 things that I always keep in mind: is always be selling. Revenue solves a lot of problems. And so we never take our foot off the gas selling. We are out in the environment, telling stories, connecting with people, getting new clients, and that helps a lot. So never stop selling. And a lot of people are like, oh, we have to make cuts in the agency or something. So the first person they'll want to fire is like their salesperson. And I'm like, no, that's the last person you fire. Like, whoever's bringing in revenue, you need to take things off their plate and get them out there. Go sell, my friend, right? So that's first tactical principle. The second tactical principle is keeping things simple and getting back to what you're good at. A lot of times when we're struggling for revenue, we'll take on accounts that are not a good fit for our team. And that creates more problems than good. So let's use an example. Like, let's say you are an expert at building race cars, and someone comes to you and is like, hey, I really need you to build a boat. Like, I know we have the skill set, but we're going to have to retool everything to build this boat. Is this what we want to be doing? Most likely not, right? So the first one is always keep selling. The second one is stay in your lane, keep it simple. The second one is you have to be maniacal about your systems and your project management. And if you think that you can skip by just, hey, I sent you a Slack message, did you get that? And did you act on that? Nope. It has to be trackable. It has to be reportable. It has to be able to show the client, hey, we're going to do these things in the next 30 days, and here's how we're doing, and we've completed half of those already. So if you hate systems and you hate organization, you need to hire someone on your team that's really good at that, because without that, you will always be stuck in chaos.
Yeah. There is something that Dan, I remember him saying at one point, Jan Martell, that I really enjoyed. It's like that idea that you should be always selling with the objective of creating an operational problem. That you're going to run into them. I mean, operations needs to be consistently evolving and learning and all of that. And so I agree with that sentiment. And my brain is effectively a spreadsheet. So I'm like that very linear person, for better or worse. And data components and making sure that things are very clear. Like, I don't think that anything should be left to memory. Like, and I have a pretty damn good memory.
Yeah.
But if I left things to memory, I guarantee you things are going to get forgotten. Things are going to get missed. I'm going to make mistakes 100%. And I make them anyways, even when the systems are directly in front of me and are reminding me of everything I need to do. And the idea that you're going to be able to do that in a moment of chaos, when you've sold, when you are having an operational problem, and now your mind is being pulled and stretched even more, that's when I see agencies regress a ton.
Yeah.
And where they stay in this like kind of hamster wheel where they're growing, shrinking, growing, shrinking, growing, shrinking, but effectively staying in the exact same place for years. And there's nothing more frustrating than that.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst because you realize you're not progressing. And it's draining on the team. The people that are hired and working to help you achieve your mission, if you burn them out, they're either going to quiet quit on you, and that's going to create a lot more issues, or they're just going to be so tired of the firefights that they won't, like, everything becomes a fire. So nothing's important, right? And so you have to help protect your team and their bandwidth and their mental health so that they can operate at a high level. If they're exhausted, they're making more mistakes than ever. So it is really important to build out those systems and to build that culture. Otherwise, you're stuck.
There was a really good book that I enjoyed around this kind of idea of the old kind of style of management, the burnout oriented side of things, like the Ford era versus the modern era. And there's like, I find it interesting that you see, I'm in this like weird kind of middle ground between the baby boomers and millennials and Gen Zs, you know, so I have a bit of both of them in my mind, but brought up in my career predominantly by baby boomers.
Yeah.
And so I have like this interesting kind of grit and work ethic that I think that millennials do tend to have, but the book dives into the idea of that grit component, the how to create that real true alignment, the issue that ultimately happens when people are overworked and are working more than 8 hours in a day, how many errors end up happening, the likelihood increases astronomically every moment, every minute, every hour over 8 hours. And it's called Thrive by Design. If you're interested in how to create greater alignment stuff, I just really enjoyed that book. One of the things that, because I'm such a data-minded person, that I'd like to hear your take on it. And here's the reason why I'm going to preface it a little bit. That to me, everything in some way or form or another breaks down to a number.
Yeah.
And for someone that may or may not be that way, I'm curious how you see running your agency or your business by the numbers. What numbers are you looking at? How do they actually mean? How does it provide you clarity? And whether you are that just innately data-driven person to begin with.
That's a great question, because you want to have a scoreboard. If you don't have a scoreboard, how do you know if you're winning? Right? You've got to track stuff. So I am the exact opposite of you. If your mind is a spreadsheet, mine is a Jackson Pollock painting. It's like I am all over the board, man. Like I'm definitely more of a creative, more of an extrovert, more of like just out there wild. Like, and so I do not have that really organized mindset and everything in this distinct category, right? So I've had to hire people on my team that are good at that, because that's not me. And I'm really bad at those things. So once again, going back to all the personal development work, realizing, okay, this is a huge gap. I need to fill it with someone who is lighted up by being in that regard. So here's some of the numbers that we look at in the agency. Is obviously we have a P&L. That is absolutely crucial. So that's the source of truth for everything, which is how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, is there any money left over? And we run our business in a very fiscally responsible way. We always have cash reserves. that if things go sideways, we can make sure that we can pay our team and service all our debts. So we run it like kind of from a financial perspective of fiscal responsibility. So that's the number one set of numbers we look at, which is what is actually happening in the business.
Mm-hmm.
The second set of numbers we look at is client health. So we have everybody set up in different categories from at churn risk all the way up to excellent. And there's about 4 or 5 different gradients there. And we're looking at it from 2 perspectives. The results, so the data that we're supposed to be getting them, so that's like growth targets, ROI on ad spend, looking at overall objective of the brand. So what is the data saying? Are we winning or losing?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is the emotional component. Do they like us? Do they seem like they're angry? Have they mentioned that they're looking for another partner, right? Like what is the more intangible things? So we got the data and we have the intangibles. What does client rapport look like? And that is on a dashboard that I can pull up at any moment of the day. Then I can see numerically across our entire portfolio of clients who's at churn risk, who's average, who's excellent, and what's happening. Second set of data is the client data. The third set of data I'm looking at is bandwidth of the team. So we are in this interesting space where we're starting to do a little bit more time tracking and resource allocation, because in the past, people would come to us and be like, I'm stretched thin. And I'm like, well, you're managing 3 accounts and all your peers are managing 10 accounts. So is that because the accounts are so aggressive that that's all a normal human can manage? Or do we have a bandwidth issue? Or are you working another part-time job? Like you're running your own micro agency.
Yeah.
So when you work with a remote team, we don't want to be big brotherish, but we also need to have accountability on where you're spending your time. The second part of that is if you're doing manual tasks that we can replace with artificial intelligence, or that we can have a person offshore assist you, and now you're making higher level decisions, like we want to know that, right? And a lot of times employees don't understand that that's an option.
Yep.
So the third set of numbers that we're constantly looking at is how is the team bandwidth being used and allocated, and where can we make them more efficient and help them? So those are the 3 sets of numbers that as an agency owner, you have to have complete line of sight on at all times.
The P&L piece I talk about quite a lot. I thought there was a couple of interesting pieces, so I'm not going to dive into the P&L piece because I'll spend another hour talking about that. On the client data piece, I thought that was really interesting. And a lot of people don't do this, and I agree wholeheartedly that you should be. And so there's usually 2 reasons. One, I'm not collecting the data from the client in the first place. I mean, yours is a little bit different of a model since you're managing media.
Yep.
But even let's say that you're a social media agency, or you're a brand agency, or you're a web agency, like there's metrics that is measuring the output of what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And the thing that frustrates me the most, and I've said to clients many, many times, is that even if you are not tracking the data, the client has an understanding of the impact that you're having to the business. So you can either be part of the conversation or excluded from it. And I'd rather be part of the conversation.
Yes.
And so there's so much risk and this nervousness around client management because you don't actually know what the client's thinking. And I mean, I guess you're never going to actually know what they're thinking, but you can have a better understanding of where they're headed.
When we onboard a client, one of the first things we ask them is, what are you expecting out of this partnership? What does success look like? What does knocking it out of the park look like? And then we assign very strict data and guardrails around all of that. And some of our clients are paying us for content creation. Like, okay, how do you quantify that? Well, how many pieces of content did we create? How did that content perform? And did we deliver that content in a timely manner and then do the feedback properly so that we stayed on track? Well, those are all very measurable things. So if you're not having that open dialogue with the client about what does success look like, are we hitting those numbers, you're always going to be living in fear.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing, and I've had this debate so many times around time tracking, and the analogy and the way that I would like to describe it, and it's like the Apple Pencil that I have right here in front of me. I guarantee you that Apple knows how much time it takes to manufacture it, how much the ink costs to print the pencil, how much plastic it actually takes, the materials that go inside. They have every single component of it down to a T, how much wastage of that plastic goes into the creation of every single unit. And you're a service-based business. 50 to 70% of your total expenses are labor or hours of someone delivering time to the client and delivering that service, but you're not tracking it? What? What? Excuse me. No.
I know, man. And we've been on both sides of this coin. Right now we have kind of like very broad time tracking where it's really, we're trusting the team. And we're starting to get a little bit more granular, but here's why. Like we have a very strong why around this is we are making a massive investment in artificial intelligence to help our team. And essentially what we're trying to do, our thesis is all the busy work, pulling reports, looking at data, all these things we're trying to take off your plate. What we need you to do now is be a strategist. Here's the data, here's the stuff, here's everything compiled. How do we get you from A to B? How do we go from $100,000 a month to $200,000 a month? Like, what are we doing? You have all the tools laid out for you. You have the workshop. I'm hiring you to think strategically, not pull reports, not make manual bid adjustments. Like, that's not why you're here. My team is all bought in on this. So now when I say, tell me what you're doing, because I want to take that stuff off your plate and have artificial intelligence do that faster and with less mistakes, they're like, oh, yes. Now they can do stuff that's, if you rank your decisions in terms of dollar figures, now they're making $50,000, $60,000 decisions, where before they were spending all their day making $10 decisions. So we've created the why, and our team is a lot more bought in on it now, because every week I'm taking busy work off their plates. And they're like, this is cool.
That I do think is a very interesting call out, because there's a lot of instances where the agency's not actually using the information to improve their lives, so then they end up not actually having buy-in, and it hasn't been explained. I mean, time tracking, nobody enjoys it.
No.
Not a single person. It's not fun, but very necessary.
Yeah.
Extremely necessary. And especially the amount of information that you can derive from it is incredibly useful, because it makes it such an easy decision that, yes, I'm going to spend the money on this piece of software, or I'm going to invest into eliminating this across the team because this saves this many hours and has this much opportunity gain from it. Totally. So it's vital information. If you were going to be talking to yourself, let's say that you were going to look back years ago, you're first still at that freelance stage, you're at the $20,000 a month. Yep. What would be that one piece of advice that you'd give to yourself in that moment?
Is SOPs for everything, like SOPs for everything. And then every week trying to get things off your plate so that you can do what you're best at. And maybe you're best at strategy for clients. Well, a really solid strategy could land you a $50,000 client. Or maybe you're really good at sales and networking. Well, that's really valuable. Do more of that. You shouldn't be doing, hey, did we follow up on that invoice from 2 weeks ago? Right? But that's where most founders spend their time, is doing all this stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So it's SOPs for everything, and then constantly refining what is on my plate that I can get off to my team so that we can run faster and operate more smoothly. And man, if you have that level of insight and being open, like taking the ego out of the equation, you're going to progress really fast.
I'm just going to highlight that I've said exactly the same thing before, but this is coming from Taylor, who is the creative mind, the Picasso to my spreadsheet.
Yes.
Or the Pollock to my spreadsheet, as you called it. And it's vital. It's absolutely vital. If you want to have a business that allows for you to be able to step away from, to be able to leave at a reasonable hour, be able to spend time with your family, to not have to be chained to your computer, you need them. This isn't a maybe. This is a mandatory thing that you have to have. I like to kind of go through my own, and as time progresses, my time will get refilled with things. I will create more work.
Totally.
Somehow, and I call it spring cleaning once a quarter. I'm just going to go through all my time, figure out where I've taken things on that I shouldn't have. And it's, I think, a cathartic experience for me now. Before, it used to be a little bit fearful of like letting things go because of the recovering control freak that I am. But it's a vital component to being able to grow and to be able to step into the next version of yourself. Leading into the conversation, Taylor, when you and I first met, we ended up going on this like a bit of a longer kind of tirade about everything, which I think kind of fed into this conversation. And one of the things that you said I thought was really, really awesome is that the thing that you really want is to be able to help other people that were in the same place that you are. So, if there's an agency owner that is at the place where they're that freelancer, they are struggling to be able to figure out how to get to that greater scale, that greater growth, how can they get in touch with you so they can learn a little bit more from your experience?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you go to our website, there's the ability to, bestpracticemedia.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Taylor Frame. Reach out and I'm down to have a conversation. I can point you in direction of a lot of great resources of people that do this type of thing. And at the end of the day, there's always opportunities to collaborate. A lot of times stuff we do is what other agencies don't do. And so there's the ability to pass clients back and forth and build that. And the last thing I'll say here is that you want to surround yourself with good people that are building. If in your network, no one owns businesses and no one understands the pressure, the stress you're under, you need to go get a new network. You need to go make some friends with business owners if you're a business owner, right? Because it's important. You want to be around people who are like, I get that, man. That's rough. So reach out, bestpracticemedia.com. We'd love to engage.
We'll make sure to include all of those details in the show notes, everybody. But what you were saying there at the end reminded me that I just thought was really funny. I was approached years ago by a friend at a barbecue, a business owner, and he was like, well, how's business going? And I was like, oh, it's fine. He's like, no, man. How's business going? Like actually, really understanding that it's not just fine. There's a lot more story there.
Totally.
So find those people. They are absolutely vital, even if it's just to actually be able to have a meaningful conversation about where you are, that someone else that understands the place that you're in. It's cathartic at the very least, but immensely helpful. I've gotten so much value out of it.
Massive.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for joining today. It was a really insightful and fun conversation.
This is incredible. Thank you for hosting, and I hope people find value from the content we shared.